You're listening to SM Media, the #1 place for exclusive content.
Hi everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of All Time 11 right here on SM Media. I'm Scott McPike, delighted to be your host as always. A very special guest in this week's episode. I've got the former Ross County, Inverness and Dundee midfielder, Richie Hart. Richie, it's a pleasure to welcome you onto the show. Thanks very much for joining me.
No worries at all, Scott. Thanks for having me on the show.
No worries. How are you? You good?
Good, yeah. Just trying to manage life at the moment through this tough spell that everybody's having, but I can't complain too much. I've been kept busy throughout, and the kids are now back at school as well, so it's all good at the moment.
Brilliant. You'd a bit of a kind of up and down career. You started off at Ross County. What were your early days like at Ross County?
I joined County sort of when I was still at school, sort of 15, 16, and you know, I always wanted the opportunity to sort of go full time there, and at that time, Ross County were still in the Highland League, and they were just trying to push to get into the league itself, and then when they did get into the league, they took on a few full time boys like Fergie and Kenny Gilbert, and I was about 5 or 6 of them to start with. Roy McBain was another one, Jerry Farrell. And I was kind of hoping that I would get the opportunity to go full time. It didn't happen, and Neil Cooper came in that time just after Bobby Wilson. But it was a great experience. There was a lot of big characters at that time, some really good players, and I was still a young lad and still a bit kind of naive. I was just, you're 16, you're banging in goals for the reserves or whatever, and you think that automatically guarantees you a place in the starting 11. So, and I was breaking in, but it was 1 minute you maybe get on the bench, or then the next minute you'd be travelling away and you'd just be sitting in the stand as a 15th man or whatever. And I just kind of became frustrated and just wanted to go and play football on the Saturday, and that's when I went and joined Brora Rangers for the first time.
And what was your time like at Brora as well, and then getting the chance to sign for your hometown club, Inverness?
Yeah, well, Brora was, it had the effect that I was hoping to, because I just wanted to play regular football, and at that point I'd kind of stalled because I was with the first team at County, and I wasn't really making any inroads into what was a good team at the time, with some good players. So I looked at it as, taking a step back to try and take a step forward, and it took a few years to get to that point, but I was playing regularly, playing in a good league, and I was scoring goals. And the season just before I joined, Cali had a really good season with Brora, and there was always talk about that something was going to happen, whether it be Cali or back to Ross County or whatever. And then I went away, had a good tournament with the Scotland semi-professional guys, which was a new thing that had started up. So that was the kind of catalyst for me then to go and join Inverness, and which Billy Ferris was the manager at the time. Billy Ferris and Alan Hircher were the assistant manager there, and they were really pushing for me. And Billy had played under Pelly Patterson back in the Eldon days, and he was really keen for me to go. He thought that it was going to be a really good fit for me to go with Cali. And then once I met Pelly and Duncan Shearer, it was a no-brainer. And it worked out. It worked out great. It was a really successful time. Played with a lot of good players, and it took me I was 24, I think, by the time I signed full time. So it was a long time coming, but it was an opportunity that I was never going to pass up.
Brilliant. We'll touch on your making a later career later on in the show, but we'll make a restart in your team. First of all, we'll ask, is it players you played with or played against that's going to be your team?
I'll go for players I played with.
Brilliant. I think. And have we got a formation in mind of how you want to set up this team?
Well, I've gone for a sort of 3-5-2, but it's quite an attacking, it's quite an attack-minded team, you know. So there's plenty of legs and plenty of fitness in there. So to let the flair players do their bit, you know.
Brilliant. We'll make a restart. We'll start with the first position of goalkeeper. Who have you got between the sticks for your first player?
Ooh, well, goalkeepers that was one that was going to be a tough one for me because I've played with some really good goalies over the years, going back to the early Ross County days. Stevie Hutchinson was a real character, and then, you know, likes of Tony Bullock, Mark Brown at Cali, Mike Fraser. So, you know, I had some really good goalies behind me, but I'm going to go for Big Rab Douglas.
Right, okay.
Who was obviously with me at Dundee.
Yeah.
And obviously at that time, Rab was sort of coming towards the end of his career, but I'd never known Rab before that. But his, you know, he's a monster of a guy, you know, and he's got that presence about him, but he still had all that desire, professionalism. You know, and he was a great guy in the changing rooms. He was a leader, and it was a real good experience to play alongside him. And obviously, you know, he's played at the highest level, and like I say, his professionalism and discipline shone right through. So he was my goalie.
Brilliant. We'll move on to defence. We'll start off with the first of your three centre backs. We'll go with the one on the left side.
Well, left side, I'm going to go for Grant Monroe.
Right, okay.
Cali, known Granty for a lot of years, and he was an unbelievable player for Cali. He was just sort of breaking through when I first joined Cali, but you could see that, you know, he had the ability, the great left foot. His reading of the game, even from an early age, was second to none. And I think, you know, being in there with likes of Bobby Mann and stuff like that brought him on leaps and bounds. And then when he eventually did get in the team, they just couldn't take him out. He was so good. And then he went on to have a great career. And, you know, Cali captain, played in some memorable games, scored some wonderful goals. But he wasn't the quickest, and he'd be the first to tell you that, but his reading of the game was brilliant. He was good in the air, and he had a great left foot. His distribution and that from the back was really good. So he's my left-sided defender.
Brilliant. Next to him in the centre of the three, who would be there?
Centre of the three would be Big Bobby Mann.
Right, okay.
Big Bobby, again, didn't have much pace about him, but again, positionally, he read the game just so well. He had so much class about him on the park. His passing was second to none. Probably one of the best ball strikers I've ever seen. Again, another leader, great captain when I was at Cali, and like I say, he was a huge benefit to likes of Grant Monroe and that when they were coming through, and they formed a really good partnership at the back between the two of them. So yeah, Bobby's the man in the middle.
Great choice. Right hand side of the three, who closes out the defence?
Well, this was a tough one because, you know, I've played with a lot of top defenders over the years, but I'm going to go, because of the sort of style of my team I'm going to go for Big Gaz, Big Gary McKenzie from my Dundee days. A tremendous character, Big Gaz. He would throw his head in front of anything. But he was a very, very good footballer. The good schooling, obviously, from being at Rangers and stuff like that. I just thought he was a really, really top centre half. Again, good on the ball, great in the air. You know, didn't shirk a challenge. And you know, he went on to have a good career himself and played down south and that. So he's my right-sided centre half.
Brilliant. What was it about Gary McPike? Could you see the kind of experience he had for Rangers? Like, kind of stead.
You could see that. I mean, I've seen that with a lot of players that I've played with that have maybe been at the bigger clubs and dropped down. You can see that they've been well coached, well drilled, and they've got that bit about them. Obviously it didn't work out for him at Rangers, but like he still went on to have a good career, and he was part of a great dressing room that we had at Dundee at that time. Unfortunately, we never went on to win the league after being in such a good position. But the squad we had at that time was phenomenal. It was definitely one of the best change rooms I've ever been in.
Yeah, definitely. Really good defence and a goalkeeper so far. We'll touch on your time at Inverness. Obviously, you spent 6 years. What would you say was your kind of highlights of your spell there?
The highlights obviously was the winning the championship was the pinnacle, because at that time that was such a tough league, that Division 1. It was all the teams were really strong. There was no sort of real easy games, but that season we just played phenomenal, and it was nip and tuck with Clyde for the whole way. That season, and then I think the second last game of the season we went down there and beat them 2-1, and then beat St Johnstone on the last game of the season to win the league. But we had a great team. We had a great balance to the team. We were strong at the back. We had plenty of energy in midfield, and we had class acts like Barry Wilson, David Bingham, Paul Ritchie, Dennis Wyness. We had so many good players in there, and then obviously we beat Celtic in the Scottish Cup quarter-final as well. That season 1-0 at home, which again was a massive result. I think Celtic had just came on the back of knocking Liverpool out of the
that's right,
UEFA Cup that year, that week. So it was another huge. So. Yeah, I had some really, really good times. Playing in the Scottish Cup semi-final was a great experience as well. The game kind of flattered to deceive a wee bit. I think it was 1-0. We got beat by Dundee in the end. I think Dennis hit the post in the first half from about 25 yards, and if that had went in, it maybe would have been a different game. But it just the game kind of fizzled out, and we never really. We probably didn't deserve to win, but I don't know if Dundee really deserved it either. But it was a tough game. Dundee had a lot of good players at that time as well, so it was still a highlight. It was still definitely a highlight of my career.
Brilliant. You then move on to have spells at Ross County and Dundee. Like, did you enjoy these spells of your career as well, going back to Ross County?
Yeah, it was again. It was a bit disappointing when we went back to Ross County, because we had a really good squad of players, and we just, for some reason, it just didn't work out for us, and we kind of flirted round about the bottom end of the table, and we knew we had a squad that was capable of so much better, and it was a disappointing season looking back on it for the players that we had, and then a lot of the players that were there then went on to have a successful time with County, which was great. The time then I had the decision, was I going to stay with Ross County? They'd offered me another deal, and then my good pal Higgy had just signed for Dundee, and he was actually up at mine one weekend. We were having a few jars on a Sunday, and he said to me, would you be interested in going to Dundee, because I think Jockey's keen. So I literally phoned Jockey that day and met him down south, and that was it. And I was absolutely delighted to sign for Dundee. They were a bit of a boyhood club for me. My great auntie used to look after a few of the old Dundee players back in the day, Tosh McKinley and stuff like that. Okay. So Dundee was always a bit of a soft spot for me, and to get the opportunity to play there was great, and to work under Jockey Scott and Ray Farningham, and like I say, we had an unbelievable squad. I still look back and think, how did we not win that league? And I think there was a lot of things that happened that year that kind of culminated in us not winning it. But ultimately, I think when they got rid of Jockey when they did was the biggest mistake that they made.
Yeah.
And I'm sure 90% of the players that were there at the time will say the same thing. It was a bad move. We were still at the top of the league when they got rid of him. Yes, we'd had a couple of bad results, but we were still right in there. And then obviously Gordon Chisholm and Billy Dodds came in, and it just went from bad to worse. And then at the end of that season, the club went into administration again.
Yeah, it's a rough time, but we'll move on to your midfield. We'll start off with your left-sided wing-back.
Left-sided wing-back, Roy McBain.
Right, okay.
So, again, Roy was somebody that I played with, from my early days at Ross County, then on to Cali, and Roy was always one of them guys. He was always tagged the sort of unsung hero of the team, but he was such a consistent performer. He was a 7 or 8 out of 10 every game. You knew what you were going to get from him. He'd so much ability on the ball, but he worked so hard. Could play in a range of positions, and he was a top guy as well. Came with a good background as well. Grew up at Dundee United and stuff like that. But yeah, he was a fantastic player. In that season that they won the league, Roy was in the midfield with me, and he was an absolute joy to play with. You knew what you were getting from him, week in, week out, and he's my left-sided wing back.
Brilliant, really underrated player as well.
Absolutely.
We'll move into your centre midfield. We'll start off with the left-sided centre midfielder.
Left-sided centre midfielder. I'm going to put. He probably won't thank me for putting him in there, but I'm going to stick him in there just for the thing, because he'll be happy he made my team anyway. But I'm going to put Gary Harkins in there.
Right, okay, brilliant.
Obviously, Jeeves will come up in many guys' best 11, I think. To be honest, I didn't really know much about Gary until I went to Dundee.
Yeah,
I knew he obviously played for Thistle and played against him a couple of times, but I didn't really know much more about him rather than that. But then when I went to Dundee and seen him play, he had so much ability. It was frightening. I couldn't actually believe that he used to play centre half. but he was. His talent on the ball, and that first half of the season, he was just on absolute fire for us. He was playing sort of wide on the left or whatever, but the amount of goals he used to score, like coming down the left and cutting in on his right, but he just had so much ability. I know that further on in his career he went, he got this tar of the lazy brush or whatever with him, which I think he was unfairly tagged with. He always worked hard, but I think with somebody like that, with the ability that he's got, if you've got players in and around him that can do the work for them, then he was a talent that you don't see these days, and he was a top guy, a great teammate, and just a wonderful football player.
Yeah, definitely. We'll move into the centre of the three in the centre midfield. Who have you got playing next to Gary?
Centre of the three in there, I've got Liam Keel.
Okay.
So Liam, obviously, he started his career at Celtic, and was very highly thought of when he was at Celtic. In fact, before he went to Celtic, I don't think there was a club in Britain that didn't want to sign him. I think actually Kenny Dalglish came to his house in Aberdeen trying to sign him to go down to Liverpool. Right? But he ended up at Celtic, where he was a striker, and then he eventually came up to Cali. I think he'd left Celtic, went to St Mirren, and I think he'd suffered quite a bad injury, and that kind of put paid to that. And then he ended up at Cali, and where he started off as a striker, and then slowly but surely he kind of reverted in. I think he had a bit of a moment and just said, "Look, I want to play in midfield." When he spoke to John Robertson and that. And he did, and he didn't play as much over the years. His career was hampered by some bad injuries, groin injuries and stuff like that. But we played that season. We won the league. Liam and I played quite consistently together, and he was just a workhorse. He never stopped. You know what I mean? He was hard as nails. He got about the pitch. He was underrated in terms of ability that he had. His touch was brilliant. He could score goals. In fact, when I had to spell out the Cali team with a similar injury to what Liam had, he came in and kind of took my place and had a really good spell as well, scoring goals from midfield and stuff like that. But just we played in some really good games together. I remember games we played against Ibrox, up against Rixon and Barry Ferguson stuff, and it was like me and Liam in the middle of the park and that. And he was just a great guy to have alongside with you. Like I say, his work rate and ability was really good and underrated. And it was a shame that things never quite worked out for him the way they did. But sometimes that's what happens in football. But he's in there in my midfield 100%.
Brilliant. We'll go on to the right hand side of centre midfield. Two partners, Gary and Liam.
So I've got Don Cowie in there.
Okay.
Chipper. Again, a guy I've known, way back in my younger years. Came through the ranks at Ross County with him, and then eventually we ended up at Cali together. And Don had a fantastic season and rightly got his move down south, which is, was probably the best thing he'd ever done, going down to Watford, and had a great spell at Cardiff. But again, fitness wise, I mean, he was just phenomenal. He could run all day and never look out of breath. A bit like Liam, just incredible fitness levels. But again, really good on the ball, barely gives the ball away, doesn't overcomplicate anything, keeps it simple, could score goals, gets up and down the park all day. Just a great guy to have in a team. He's definitely in my best 11.
Yeah, I really like Don Cowie as well.
Yeah,
when he done really well in England as well. We'll close out your midfield with your right-sided wing back.
So right-sided wing back, although that you probably wouldn't play there. This midfield five would probably be rotating quite a bit, but I've got a guy in there called Andrew Cohen, who I played with in Malta, who you probably don't know much about. But when I went to play for Hibernians in Malta, and I remember Paul McManus was there with me at the time, and when I met Paul, and he says, "I'll wait till you see this boy, Andrew Cohen, that plays with us." He says, "He's unbelievable." He says, "Away with the national team just now, but when he comes back," he says, "wait to see him. His ability's frightening." And when Andrew came back and started training with him, it was unbelievable. He was a number 10 all day long. His ability was brilliant. He's got some great videos on Facebook and that of his goals and all that kind of stuff. But the skill and stuff he had in the ball, the goals he scored. We instantly sort of struck up a good partnership when we first went there. Myself, Andrew, and Paul. Pre-season, we were just banging in the goals. Them two, but a really, small player, only 5'6", 5'7", something like that. Quick, 2-footed, could score free kicks, overhead kicks. Always looking to take people on. Just a wonderful little player, and he's definitely in my best 11 team. Yeah,
brilliant midfield as well. We'll touch on your time at Malta as well. How did that move come about?
So I'd actually, it was a bit of a strange one actually, because I'd went to Östersunds in Sweden, from Dundee, and it was a friend of mine, Mark Holmes, who was doing a bit of agency work at the time, and he said Lee Makel was the manager at the time.
Right, okay.
And he says, I'd always fancied going abroad or whatever, and I felt that the time was right to go and do that. So originally I went out there on loan. By the time that sort of came round was the sort of end of June, I think, but they'd already been like sort of halfway through their season, and I hadn't had any pre-season or whatever, and I'd went out there and started to train with them. And then my now wife, who was my girlfriend at the time, she'd actually just left for a job to go and live in Malta.
Right.
And I didn't really settle in Sweden for the first few weeks. It wasn't what I expected it to be, and there was a heck of a lot of travelling involved. Our closest away game was 4 hours away, and
Is that right?
I'd done enough travelling from with living in Inverness and all the travelling that we used to do before that, and I hadn't really looked into it much. And the standard was okay, but I wasn't up to fitness, and then there was a 2-week break not long after I got there in the season. So I decided to take a trip down to Malta to see my girlfriend. And when I got there, Mark, who manufactured the move for me out to Sweden, I'd been speaking to him, and he said, "Oh, I could get you, maybe see about getting a team over here for you." So he phoned one of the managers at Hibernians, a chap, Mark Miller. So I met him literally the day later or whatever, and he said, "Yeah," he says, "if we can get something sorted out, we'll take you, no problem." Like, so that was it. I had it in my mind. I was like, right, that's it. I'm going back to Sweden, and I'm just going to speak to Lee and just tell him that's it. I'm going to move to Malta. But it wasn't quite as straightforward as that, because of the whole situation with Dundee. They were just going to into administration. They hadn't paid me a month's wage or whatever that I was due. There was problems with the team in Sweden with the clearance and stuff like that, and they weren't wanting to let me go until they received money that they'd got for the agents' fees and all this kind of stuff, and it just turned into an absolute nightmare. But eventually got it sorted out, and spent a year, almost exactly a year out there playing, and it was a absolutely brilliant experience. The lifestyle itself, living in the Mediterranean country, it was great. I really enjoyed the football. It was a bit different because we trained at night, and all the Maltese guys were sort of part-time, so we kind of trained as a full-time club, but at night time, so we had the day to ourselves and just pottered about or whatever. But the standard was decent. My pal Big Mikey Fraser, he came out and joined Birkirkara as well, so we were out there for the whole time together as well. So, and obviously Paul McManus was out there in the team with me as well, and it was brilliant. I mean, there's been quite a few people I think have went out to Malta and played out there, and it's I would recommend it to anyone. I thoroughly enjoyed the experience. I mean, getting paid wasn't always easy. They don't do direct debits and stuff like that into your bank account out there. It was checks and cash, or sometimes a bit of both, or sometimes it was a check and don't cash that until next Wednesday and stuff like that. But it was one of the things that just went along with what it was out there. But with a lot of good friends out there, still keep in touch with a lot of my ex-teammates. Myself and the wife went back out there and got married out there.
Right.
So
Brilliant.
it's a special place for me, and like I say, I had a lot of great memories out there.
Brilliant. You went to Brora as well. You finished your career at Brora. Did you always kind of plan on kind of finishing your career there?
I suppose in a way I kind of did. I mean, the Dundee, as I was kind of sort of coming towards the end of my career, or even not so much coming towards the end of my career, but I was trying to think more about what I was going to do when the football days were over, because how I came about to being in full-time football was probably different to how it ended up for a lot of people. I'd been working and had been in full-time work before I then left that to go and be a full-time footballer, and that happens very, very rarely these days, if at all. So I was always thinking about, football was something that I was always wanted to do, but I was realistic in the fact that, I was never going to make the money from football that was going to allow me to just do whatever I wanted after football. So I was always looking ahead. And then the last couple of years, what happened with Dundee and what was happening with other clubs, I was kind of just getting a bit fed up with it, this going from contract to contract and, having to find new clubs and all that kind of stuff. So when I came back from Malta, I actually planned on playing football anywhere. I was working on a business with a friend of mine in East Kilbride, who ran a company that my wife had been working for, and then I went along to Ayr for a wee while, and started training with them for a wee bit, and did a little bit of pre-season when Brian Reid was the manager there. But to be honest, that was kind of the end for me, because I think in one of the games, it was almost like, you were there and you were sort of training, and it was almost like you were on trial, and it was just like, if you want me to come and sign for you, let's get something done. But if not, then let's just move on. And then there was a game, I think we played Man United in a friendly.
Yeah.
I'd hurt my knee the week, I don't know, was it in training or was it the one of the games we'd had the previous Saturday? But I was struggling a wee bit with my knee, but I felt all right. I was like, I'll get through it, or what have you. So before the game, I've went through and said to the physio or whatever, I says, "Oh, have you got any ibuprofen or whatever like that?" And she says, "What are you wanting that for?" And I says, "Well, I'm just wanting it for my knee." "Oh, I thought you said you were fine." I says, "Well, I am fine." I says, "I've just got a little bit of pain." I says, "I'm just wanting to take an ibuprofen or whatever." "Oh, you told me you were fit and that." I says, "Well, I am fit." So anyway, I wasn't starting the game. So as the game was going on and on and on, it got to about Reedy had made quite a lot of changes at half time or whatever, and I was still on the bench. And then it got to about 5 minutes before the end of the game, and his assistant, what's his name, Scotty McKenzie, turned around to me and said, "How are you? You all right to go on?" I was like, "Wow, what do you mean I'm all right to go on?" And he was like, "Is your knee all right?" I was like, "It's fine." So I got on for the last couple of minutes, and I was just like, part of me was just wanting to say, "Do you know what? I'm not going on. That's it." So after that, I actually came through in the car with Scotty, and I think you could tell that I was annoyed, and I was sitting in the back of the car, and he said, "I didn't know." He says, "The physio had said, I says, "Do you know what, Scotty?" I says, "Don't worry about it." I says, "That's me finished." He said, "I'll come back in next week, and I says, "Nah." I says, "That's me. I've had enough of this, so that was it." And then I decided I was kind of at that point where I was like, "That's me done with football. I've had enough of it. I'm just going to go and look for what I'm going to do next." And then Paul Hartley was in touch to go to Alloa when I was down staying in Glasgow for a bit, but again it was like, to come in and train with us for a wee bit, and I was just like, "Nah." I says, if you want to sign me. If not, then that's fine. So, and then I got the call from Brora. They were obviously working on a bit of a project there to get the club sort of back up. They've been in the doldrums for a while, and so I got a call to go back up there, and got offered eventually the opportunity to work in Ben McPike, who was the guy that was sort of bankrolling Brora at the time, an opportunity to work with his company, but obviously one of the big things was for my wife she fancied a change of job as well. So she managed to get a job. They were looking to fill a role there, which she was a good fit for. And I had to wait a wee while before I managed to get in there. But I've not looked back since, you know. So I'd got the opportunity. I'd bide my time for a wee bit, but it was great, and went back and won the league with Brora. I had a fantastic time. Played with a lot of my ex-teammates again, which was brilliant, like Stuart Golobeck, Big Grant was up there, Tokes. So a lot of good guys up there, great people, and it was just felt it was a nice way to kind of finish off. Albeit that my last season with Brora, I injured my knee. I dislocated my kneecap in the February, and at that stage, I had my first son was quite little at the time.
Yeah.
I just thought, do you know what? Now I'd planned on finishing at the end of that season anyway, and then I had the injury, and I was just like, you know what? I says, nah, that's it. I'm just gonna call it a day, and that was it. And I've barely kicked the ball since. Albeit I had been back in helping Brora this season, but yeah, it was just the right time. I think you know, there's a lot of players or people, you know, they want to keep hanging on and playing, and you know, they always say play as long as you can, but I just felt it was time for me to move on and concentrate on family life. I was busy with work at the time, and it all came together at the end, and it was just a nice way to end it, you know.
Brilliant. We'll finish up your team. We'll start with your first striker. Who's in the left side of striker position?
Okay, so wee Sparky, wee Griffiths, who was so again, not somebody I knew a lot of until we signed him for Dundee, and I guess I was probably like most guys when he first came in. I was just like, wow, who is this guy? You know, he was just as a player. I mean, he was still very raw when he first came to Dundee, but his finishing ability was just unbelievable. I've never seen anybody who loved scoring goals more than Leigh Griffiths. You know, just catch him at any time. All he'd be doing is just kicking balls into the net, and he just loved it. You know, you could just see he was just like a kid at the playground. You know, he just loved that feeling of hitting the ball into the back of the net, and he was a funny little character at the time, and he had a few moments at Dundee when he caught the wrath of Big Rab. I remember one time he turned up. We were playing Ross County at home, and it was quite a big game for us, and it came to 10-3, and there was still no sign of wee Sparky. And then he eventually bowled in just a couple of minutes before kickoff, I think. And Big Rab had a few choice words with him in the boot room, I think, before the game. But yeah, I mean, listen, he was a lovable wee guy. I had a lot of time for him when I was at Dundee. You know, he was a young lad. You know, he had so much ability, and you know, he maybe wasn't getting the right sort of guidance or whatever at that time of his life. I'm not really too sure. But I really liked Leigh. Had a lot of time for him, and I was just delighted to see that, you know, he's went on and to have the career that he's had, because you know, to go on and with you know, the well documented issues and troubles and that he's had. To go on and do what he's done at Celtic, the amount of goals and that he's scored, he's proven he's been one of the best goal scorers the Premier League's ever seen, and that there's no doubting that. I mean, he scores all kinds of goals, left foot, right foot, brilliant in the air, and yeah, he's definitely got to be in there, because if you needed a goal, you know, he's proved it on more than one occasion that he's the man.
Yeah, definitely. We'll finish up your team. Who partners Leigh Griffiths up front?
So partners, Leigh Griffiths, again, tough one, because I played with some great strikers over the years. David Bingham, Paul Ritchie, Sean Higgins, some top players. But this guy's going in because when I first went to Cali, he was pivotal for me in how I played, the goals I scored, and we just had a great partnership when I first went there, and that's Dennis Winus.
Brilliant.
Dennis, again, quiet, unassuming guy. Barely spoke 2 words, just went about his business. But, when he went on the football pitch, he was unbelievable. I remember, before I went, just when I signed for Cali, one of the boys said to me, watch out for Dennis's dragon in training. And I didn't, what are you talking about, And then I was literally the first time I went up against him, and he's shaped me up and he's just dragged me, and I'd never experienced that before, and he used to do it. I don't know how, I lost count of the amount of times in that first season and second season that I had with Dennis, where he would do that to defenders. He would square them up and then just drag the ball around them and rifle one into the top corner. It was unbelievable. And I actually remember there was a guy who used to play for St Mirren, big Richie Robb, I think his name was,
right.
Big centre half, and it was at Cali Park, and Dennis again squared him up, dragged him and rifled this thing into the top corner with his left foot. But as he's falling over, Richie Robb shouted, he's done me again, because it wasn't the first time he'd done it. You knew it was coming. You knew it was coming, but you just couldn't do anything about it.
Yeah.
And when him and Paul Ritchie played together that season, we won the league and that. I mean, they were just on fire. I mean, the two of them scored, a barrel load of goals. And I think one game before we played Celtic in the CIS Cup, we went down to play Alloa before them in the league, and they both scored hat-tricks in the same game, and I was like, that never happens, where both your strikers score hat-tricks at that kind of level. They were in such a rich vein of form all through that season. But yeah, for me, Dennis was a great player. He was a great link-up for me. One of my strengths, if you like, when I played and when I first went to Cali, was making that runs from midfield and beyond the strikers and stuff. But Dennis was brilliant for holding up, and we struck up a really good partnership together.
Brilliant, really good team. Is there any players that just missed the grade that you feel kind of deserve a wee mention?
Yeah, there's a couple. Well, obviously, I mentioned Higgy and David Bingham. Higgy, obviously, I played with at Ross County, and we played together at Dundee. And Higgy was another one that he had so much ability. He was a proper football player. He had a great touch. He was good at bringing others into play. And he scored a lot of goals. He was Ross County's second top goal scorer, or still is their second top goal scorer, only just overtaken by Midge not that long ago. And then we went to Dundee together, and again, but he was a great teammate to have. We're good friends as well, but he was a really good footballer, and he got his move eventually to St Johnstone after the great season he had with the Defiant team. He scored a lot of goals, and I think that season he really showed the qualities that he had. Things didn't work out for him as well as you would have hoped at St Johnstone. Again, I think he had some niggly injuries over the years, and that which happens to players, and yet, and in the end you don't always get to see the best of them. But ability wise, he was right up there, and David Bingham again was quality. When it was a stroke of genius from Robbo when he brought him in, because again, we lost Dennis and we needed a sort of replacement for him, and Bingy came in and was brilliant, really good, great touch, just so much experience, and again somebody that had a great career with Livy. And then obviously, to be honest, I could have picked that whole 11 that played with me that season that we won the league, because I felt that was we had such a great balance to that team, and you know, I talk about like Paul Ritchie, Barry Wilson, and that. But we had the youth and we had the legs in there, but we had that older, experienced heads who were just great at leading us and getting us to where we needed to be. And it was just a great team to be part of.
Brilliant. I've really enjoyed this. It's been an absolute pleasure, Richie. Thanks very much for doing that. Brilliant.
No problem at all. It was a pleasure to come on and do it.
What's your plans for the future as well? Were you maybe getting back into football? You thought about coaching and management, etc.?
Well, I'm kind of I've been helping out with Brora, sort of tail end of last year, just to support Stephen and Cammy, just because Stephen and David Hines, they both work down in Dunfermline during the week.
Right,
so it was just to help with Craig during the week for training on a Tuesday or whatever, and just be there on a Saturday if need be. So but it's been good. I enjoyed it. It was good getting back in about it, and I was starting to kick a ball again, and then thinking, hang on, I'm only 42. I could maybe get another season out of me. And then we played we had a practice match because we were struggling for games before the season started. So we had a practice match against ourselves, and myself and Sid and Craig and that played in the game as well. And then about 20 minutes into the game, I got absolutely smashed, and couldn't walk properly for about 2 weeks afterwards. So I was the comeback was curtailed, and that was it. The dream of coming back and playing for another season was shattered. But no, it was good, and it kind of got me a bit. Coaching, and that was something I never really thought much about, because I know a lot of players go down that route of they're looking and think, well, I'll just go into coaching because it's a natural transformation for them just to go into the coaching, especially if they've been in football all their life. But it wasn't something that was at the top of my list to do. But I'm also I've just started coaching with my friend Mark, who I was telling you about, was doing the agency stuff. He's got a very successful football academy here, Mark Holmes Football Academy. So I've started doing some coaching with him, with the kids and that, which is great, and I enjoy that. But obviously, it's been tough just now with all the restrictions and everything in place. So everything's kind of been a bit stop-start with the Brora thing and then the coaching. But I started to get into it, and I've got 2 boys now as well who are 7 and 4. So my 7-year-old's getting into the football now, and he's going along to coaching and getting coached and stuff like that. So I'm really looking forward to seeing how they got on, and if they're going to go down that route of playing football.
Brilliant. It's been an absolute pleasure, Rich. I really enjoyed it. Thanks very much.
You're welcome, Scott. Thanks, mate. Cheers.
Cheers.